Hey guys. Thanks, Pierce. First of all, show of hands, has anybody here actually flown Virgin America? Wow, you guys are definitely the demographic. There are more geeks, tech enthusiasts, innovators that fly Virgin America, and I need to be careful to not say us, because as of 3 weeks ago, I actually switched to a different company. I now work for Panasonic, doing their in-flight entertainment strategy in China. So I'm going to kind of go through a couple of Virgin America things here, which I think is incredibly relevant, and then I'm going to tie it all together into how the in-flight entertainment industry, which really, you know, if you progress back 10 years in your mind, it was a very antiquated industry. Overhead video, no options. Virgin America obviously is one of many carriers out there that continues to ladder up and notch up in terms of what you're doing in the cabin. So let me walk you through a couple of slides. Remember, when Piers first contacted me, I was at Virgin America, so I started my presentation as such. Virgin America right now has 20 Airbus A319, A320 aircraft. That's what you see here. It's a domestic, U.S. domestic carrier. Was started by, I was one of the original founding team in New York. We had a typical startup, probably like what you are all familiar with. We worked 18-hour days, had 15, 20 people in a loft in Soho at first. This was 4 years ago. And the Virgin Group, Richard, charged us with, hey, figure out what's next in terms of aviation. What will actually move the industry? How will we do it? So we began kind of, looking to him, who is very much my idol today. And I hope, for those of you who have met him or have read anything that he's written, seen him, get to know him. He's the most public, not public figure that I know. So, okay, this is where we were. This was 4 years ago. You look at any U.S. domestic carrier, still today, this is what the airline or aircraft cabin looks like. In front is actually considered first class, and people pay a ton of money. Looks like, you're sitting in dirt. Your neighbors probably look unhealthy. It doesn't give you a feeling of actually being in an environment you want to be in. And so that's kind of where we started in the thought process. And as we get into the interactivity, the look and feel of how the actual experience for the passenger or guest works, or we ideally would like it to work, you'll kind of get a sense of where we came from. Okay, so one of our lead designers, a guy named Adam Wells, he actually did the upper class suite on Virgin Atlantic, came over here to the U.S., did Virgin America, the interiors, and is now back working for Virgin USA on some other projects. So Adam came up with this mood lighting system that actually has, I think, 12 different mood lighting scenarios. So as you're flying on a red-eye flight, let's say, from here to New York, you're gently woken up, you're gently actually put to bed, as the flight attendants say it, because it aids in creating an environment that, I shouldn't say Virgin America completely has control over, because it still is an aircraft environment, but we're able, or Virgin America is able to, better service and better respond to the guests that fly. So a lot of them were to kind of set the stage for interactivity in the cabin. So going off what I was, I apologize for the colors here. It really doesn't do the cabin justice. But going off what I was saying, think back 10 years, think of that silly overhead movie, with either a projected screen or LCDs, were coming around then. But still, it was one movie for the entire cabin. It wasn't, your control, it was the airline's control. Everything was edited. It was a completely different experience to what you find today, or what you are beginning to find more domestically. International kind of took off earlier, where long-haul carriers implemented what this system's called as AVOD, audio video on demand. And so the principle behind it is to stick a bunch of servers on the aircraft, create a distributed environment. In this case, these are computers at every seat. In previous states, the distributed environment actually had computers beneath the floor. But in either scenario, you're able to actually stream a video or an audio program on demand to your seat. And how you do it and how you build the interface, what other bells and whistles you put in, this is kind of a baseline. So what we did, and really some of the key differentiators here are you're able to completely control your experience. If you are seated in, let's say, 20F window seat, and you want to order a beer and a chicken sandwich, you can touch your screen. You don't need to push the flight attendant call button. You're able to actually do it electronically. Orders are transmitted to the flight attendants, and it does a lot in the way of crew optimization. Some other things that are there, for example, playlists. Just like you would an iTunes playlist, you're actually able to go through, I think Virgin America has 3,500 or so MP3s and adding, and you can create your own playlist. Once the end game in this whole on-aircraft network is for airlines in general to network with the ground. So the end game here, which will occur later this year, is actually see these connected via wireless network, which Virgin America announced, I think, about 6 or 8 months ago, to the ground. So you'll not only be able to take advantage of laptop internet access, you'll also be able to go off aircraft with text messaging, with IM. Right now, everything's contained to the, I think I got another slide on it. Everything's contained to these seatback computers. So you're able to, if you see the hot girl in 22A, you want to send her a text message, you can do it. Now, she can decline you. You could invite a group of people. So you're actually able to do some of the same things that people find, in a lounge atmosphere on the ground. They experience, in social networking sites. You're able to try those and use those in flight, still contained to that one aircraft. Obviously, once broadband occurs, you'll be able to connect and play across the entire fleet of aircraft, whether it's a video game or, text messaging. This is the actual in-flight controller that I'll pass around to you guys, let you check it out. There's one button on here that is revolutionary for the industry, and that's the food button. This guy Adam Wells and I, we shared an office in this Soho loft, and I said, okay, you got to scratch out what the food button's going to look like. What is it? He'd be the graphic designer. He drew out a couple of images. I think it was a hot dog, a slice of cake, a little hamburger, a fork and knife. I faxed these. This is manufactured, and this is going to get into why I'm working for Panasonic now. This is manufactured by Panasonic. So I faxed these to Osaka, Japan, and they reviewed them, and they literally crafted a food button on a handset. They had no idea what it was going to be used for because no one had ever tried this before. And so I think that going back to kind of Piers' introduction and why, probably he and many others saw me so focused these past, 8 to 10 months in the cabins, looking at the passengers, watching behavior, reiterating the software on here, even though it's technically still in beta. I think we're 12 versions into it. Adding things like mixed drink methodology, because when people were ordering a Jack Daniels, they naturally would want, a mixer with it, a Coke, ice, whatever, and there wasn't a logical way in the interface. It was something we hadn't thought of initially, and we found out about this after we had launched. And so the beauty of having a networked environment is you can actually go in, make software changes, put them out there, test them, get environmental feedback. That handset that's passing around actually has the capability to receive objective feedback from passengers. And the way that they do this is you go into a suggestion area. I don't know, did anybody send an in-flight suggestion or comment? Okay, a few of you. Those, when I worked for Virgin America, I had carried 2 BlackBerries. One was literally just for those suggestions. So as soon as they would be, you'd write them, the aircraft would land, because we don't have broadband yet. But the equivalent of an EVDO data card would transmit all the information and relay it wirelessly. So this is kind of an airline, and it's a unique situation. It's very much akin to developing in the interactive world online. You can learn a lot about what's going on by looking at the behavior, looking at the data, looking at what people are saying. So you can look at, who's buying what seats are buying, You know, are first class more interested in movies or music videos? So there's also a whole component that, you know, really we've just scratched the surface of. The entire industry has just scratched the surface of. And I think in the long run, it's thought, innovation, and direction in terms of what we can do in an aircraft cabin, in a captive environment, that will help the industry overall. I mean, ticket sale revenue needn't be the only source of revenue. There's all sorts of ancillary revenue that can be generated through here, and at the same time provide a great passenger experience. This is a shot here of the food ordering experience. So you get a selection, a carousel of items to order. In the lower right-hand corner, your video, whatever you're watching, is actually minimized, so you can continue to watch it, so you're able to multitask. Then the navigation bar that we came up with for the software, the system we call Red, it's globally available. So just like on your typical Mac or PC OS, it's something you familiarize yourself with, you get accustomed to, and pretty quickly you learn. And that was the goal here. This was the initial team. This was, you know, seated for 20 hours ordering pizzas and Chinese food straight to a room with no windows before we had airplanes. So it took us about a year and a half to really get, I think, the first version that we felt pretty comfortable with to expose publicly. And, you know, obviously it's still in a constant state of innovation, and it will always be. It's no airline that's, I think, worth their weight, you know, should ever stop innovating. Otherwise, you're running, you know, movies from 6 months ago and, you know, a bunch of other stuff that, you know, clearly you can do better. This is the screenshot of Red. I wish I had an active demo to take you guys through, but if you ever get the chance, I really encourage you to fly on it. You know, try it out. Shoot me an email. Let me know. I'd love to get your thoughts. Some of the product features. Okay, so this is I took these with the very first JetBlue Wi-Fi flight. They called it Beta Blue. Took these with my cell phone camera. I actually flew to New York to get on the first flight to shoot these spy photo shots, to go back and chat about it at my company as to, you know, what the best route for us, which, you know, or for Virgin America, you know, it was clearly something that's been planned for years. They have, you know, air-to-ground service. It's a 1 megahertz data pipe. They get it through a company called Live TV, called KiteLine. And essentially they're Yahoo BlackBerry. The BlackBerry deal is really cool in that you can take your Wi-Fi enabled BlackBerry, and I think you're going to see this a lot more, log into a mini portal and actually get your emails completely free on the aircraft through your BlackBerry. The web product, there was no surfing. There's a Yahoo instant message relay, which is really cool in that you're actually able to instant message in flight. It's kind of the first phase. You know, ultimately, when Virgin America launches the service and others, you'll be able to log in with your laptop just like you would at a hotel portal and do everything you could do. You know, open up your IM clients, start sucking down emails, VPN if you need a VPN into an office environment, those type of things. But I think that what's important to mention here is that a lot of innovation will be driven, you know, continue to be driven at the seatback as processors increase, as kind of the form and function of the devices on board change, but you'll also see a lot that's driven with ground connectivity. A lot of the stuff that's thought about or done on the ground will be easily and quickly applicable to an aircraft environment, which is really cool, which honestly over the next 3-4 years you'll see the industry change again, which is, you know, given fuel prices, really a good thing right now. Okay, so let me open up to you guys for questions. Say that one more time. You read it?
Airways just recently taking their systems out of their planes to save weight.
Yeah, actually, U.S. Airways did something, and they did two things. So they started to remove Your typical in-flight entertainment system is a very, very heavy, very cable-rich animal, if you will. If you fly, United's 12-channel system, and there's a lot of wire associated with the old analog style. U.S. Airways actually announced recently they were going to try something with fiber as well, where they do fiber to the seat through a company called Lumexis. There are a couple of people dilly-dallying, I would say, in trying to use completely revolutionary technology to lighten the aircraft environment. There are a lot more your typical, there are three big in-flight entertainment providers, Panasonic, Rockwell Collins, and Thales, and they're really looking at the entire systems in general and how you can continue to lighten, because it's obviously a fuel burn issue to fly around with too much weight. Ethernet backbone, the gigabit backbone, has actually done, tremendous. I cannot even tell you the amount of savings. You look underneath the floor at one of our cabins or Singapore Airlines cabins, and you'll see relatively few wires. So you'll see some boxes. There's a power system as well that provides AC outlets at every seat. So you see more weight around that. You're beginning to than you do around the actual computer network. That's a great question, though.
Sorry, can I ask a question as well? It's about what are your thoughts on in-train entertainment? Would that make riding on a train, long-haul train trips, the whole thing more interesting or something? Do you see it happen, or?
Absolutely. There was, and I'm not sure if they're still doing it. There's a company that Alaska Airlines, a baggage handler from Alaska Airlines, started called DigiPlayer. I don't know if you guys have flown on Alaska, but you rent this little unit, and basically what he ended up doing, and his company grew into this larger company, was selling those to Amtrak. And so Amtrak took those. Now, that wasn't an installed system. Clearly with, Wi-Fi, WiMAX, there have been some satellite solutions that have never really worked. It's more your commuter rails. And I'm digressing from in-flight entertainment, but I do think the train market is, very interesting, especially for your long hauls. And I think you'll probably see some innovation there that's, a bit unexpected. The Panasonic in-flight systems, the one unique component is clearly that these things are shaken, they're burned, they're put through all sorts of tests because they're aviation equipment. They need to be certified for the aircraft. The fits for train cars, rail cars are a little bit different, less, certification issues, although there still are some. Good. How much did the FAA cramp our style? That's a good question.
And if you could do away with, say, one or two regulations that maybe aren't that important, that could make it like flying just so much better, not just on Virgin, but like any airline. Like there's so many silly rules I feel like when I'm flying that I don't want to abide by, but I sort of am pressured into.
Good questions. Okay, so the FAA actually, for us and for a number of carriers, they certified wireless access. So we have 802.11 is certified on every single one of our aircraft. We're actually flying and using it, which was a great, we were the first airline to actually put it into crew use. So the crews carry tablets. The tablets, PCs actually accept food orders from the system. So as passengers are ordering, 22A orders such and such, they're able to deliver a la carte. So what that allows us to do, or allows Virgin America to do, is get the cart out of the aisle and kind of create this more spacious cabin, a more pleasant experience, less traffic in the aisleway, and also optimize the system. You mentioned some other do's and don'ts, the 10,000-foot requirement for personal electronics. I mean, there are some universal rules that they have out there that I think over time, will shift. There are other countries that are flying with the ability to turn on your cell phone. They operate what they call a picocell on the aircraft, which actually regulates the power on your cell phone so that you don't transmit more than is necessary that would interfere with the ground network. You're able to text message from flight. If, wearing my airline cap, obviously voice traffic, if done right, and done with an environment on board the aircraft that is either a voice-only zone or a phone booth. It can be really cool. If done wrong, it can be really annoying. So I'd be all for text messaging and maybe capping the voice use. Got a question?
In light of 2001 and the planes going into the buildings, did you take any of that into play in terms of an individual becoming aware of somebody who's doing something weird, or being able to communicate with their families if they were in a hijacked plane, or any of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that and that's a very, very relevant question. Everything from the chat on board to even things like the fact we don't edit movies, Virgin America doesn't edit movies. There are a whole bunch of controls built into the thing for flight attendants, for crew. You can restrict seats from doing certain things. As the internet comes on board, there's a whole other thought process that's gone on with that very much addresses the issues you were getting at. You got one in the back?
Experience you created. And I just realized now how much actually demographic data can be tied back to all of the things I do, because what seat I sit in, other flights I fly in, right, and valuable information. I'm also curious, do you think longer term as fuel costs rise, do you see potentially enough revenue coming in through services like this that can offset some of that?
Absolutely, and I think you'll see more. This is a vehicle that's out there that people like all of you are now starting to think about, that 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago was really confined to avionics engineers down in Orange County, where most of them are based, not a broader, worldwide audience. And the fact that, I'm getting queries, hey, would this, could I port this Linux game? Can I try running this app on the server, and could we create this business model that, we're thinking about it like a metered approach to, tick away credits, or all sorts of interesting thought around it. And so, to your point, or to address your question, I think absolutely you're going to see a whole bunch of new ancillary revenue that no one's expected. You're going to see entire business units at airlines getting created just to focus on instead of government sales, or instead of I'm looking at connecting with GDSs or the Expedias of the world. There's going to be a department focused on ancillary revenue through platforms like this.
But I was on the tarmac for 3 innings of a Cubs game, and that
was no.
One thing that were you guys? The thing I thought that was most innovative for me about it was the fact that it wasn't in flight, just that it was turned on instantly when I got on the plane. And I think we spend more time now worried about the time we spend on the tarmac than in flight. Was that something that you guys had thought of, or was that just a lucky?
The scripting of it. So that's a great question. A lot of airlines don't open up entertainment until after you take off. That was definitely a decision we made. It's just a very clean-cut decision. Don't edit movies. Don't restrict, controls in any way. The only thing that's restricted until the first cart pass is really the food service, and that's for the crew basically to make one pass through without getting a whole bunch of inundated with orders. But yeah, to your point, absolutely. I think that the more you can look at situations like that and actually address what the passenger or guest is going through, the better. But I know we're short on time. I will just, I guess, leave it to you guys. If you have any more questions, email me. I'm with Panasonic now, so I'm actually commuting. I'm going to be going off to Shanghai to open up their China operations. There are a whole bunch of domestic. It's a huge untapped market. You can kind of take it from there of, potential to really expand on in-flight entertainment. Thank you all. Thanks, Pierce.